Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name is Elise. I'm 38, and right now, I'm sitting on the edge of my bed in our dimly lit bedroom, clutching my phone like it's both a lifeline and a weapon. I haven't told anyone this, but it's been eating me up inside for months. Maybe years. And I don't even know if I'm ready to admit it out loud yet, but I have to start somewhere. The truth is, I was texting a dad from our kids' school. Not in some harmless way, like sharing carpool details or school projects. No, it started as something more, a conversation that felt like an escape, like a secret window into a different version of myself. One that still felt desirable, alive, and seen. But my husband, Daniel, found out. Now he's in DC, serving me papers, and everything feels like it's crumbling apart faster than I can catch my breath. It's not like we began like this. I remember the early days, the way his hands fit perfectly in mine, how his voice could make my heart flutter even after a long day. Our relationship felt safe and exciting all at once. There were nights when the world fell away, and all that mattered was the warmth between us, the gentle press of his lips against my neck, the way his touch made me feel alive in my own skin. We were a team, partners who could trust each other with everything, or so I thought. But then, slowly, the space between us grew. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting matches or sudden betrayals at first. Just a subtle fading. The way he kissed me started to feel different, less urgent, almost routine. I'd lean in for a hug, and instead of pulling me close, he'd stiffen, as if I was asking for something I wasn't entitled to anymore. Nights that once ended tangled in sheets now ended with me staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, work, parenting, life's endless demands. But deep down, I knew it was more. The passion was gone, and with it, the connection that had once made me feel safe and wanted. There was a quiet loneliness I couldn't shake, a growing distance I couldn't bridge. I remember the exact moment I realized something had changed. It was a Wednesday evening. I had just picked up the kids from school, juggling backpacks and snacks while Daniel sat on the couch, absorbed in his phone. I reached out for his hand, hoping for that familiar squeeze, that small sign that we were still in this together. He pulled away. No words, no explanation. Just a look that said, "Not now." That night, I lay awake beside him, my hand empty where his used to be. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument. It wasn't just a lack of touch, it was the absence of trust, of intimacy, of the person I thought I knew. So, yes, I started texting someone else. Someone who listened, who responded, who made me feel like I still mattered. And now, here I am, wondering if that moment in DC is the end of something or the painful beginning of something new. I don't know what happens next. But I know I can't keep pretending I'm okay. Not anymore. Daniel is a lawyer. Not one of those TV types in sharp suits with dramatic courtroom battles, but a government lawyer, long hours, endless emails, and a constant grind that makes him come home exhausted, distracted, and, honestly, a little distant. That night, the same night I realized things had shifted, I watched him try to reach out in his own way, clumsy, maybe, but with good intentions. When he came to bed, he brushed my hair back softly, like he was trying to close the distance between us with a touch. I wanted to lean in, to catch that old spark, but all I felt was a wall between his touch and my heart. His hand lingered a moment too long on my waist, not tender, but almost desperate. I flinched and pulled away before I could explain what I needed. Because what I needed wasn't touch. It was words. It was the emotional space that used to feel easy between us. I wanted him to ask how I was really feeling, not just to try and fix it with a kiss or a hug that felt more like a routine. But he doesn't see it that way. For Daniel, love means showing up physically, holding me when I'm upset, trying to spark something between us with a touch or a kiss. It's how he was raised, it's what he knows. He's practical, results-oriented, and when words fail, he falls back on actions. Sometimes, though, those actions feel like they're missing the point entirely. One evening last week, I was curled up on the couch, exhausted after a long day juggling work and the kids. Daniel came in, dropped his briefcase, and sat beside me. He reached out to pull me close, but I hesitated. "I'm tired," I whispered. He frowned, confused. "You want me to just leave you alone?" "No, I just want to talk. Really talk. Not just be held." He blinked, as if I'd spoken a different language. He swallowed, then tried again to wrap his arms around me. I pulled away gently but firmly. "I don't need you to fix me right now. I just need you to listen." And suddenly, the whole night felt heavier, like we were speaking past each other, trapped in two different worlds. I wanted him to see me, not the tired mom or the stressed-out wife, but me. The woman who still craves connection but is afraid to ask for it. The woman who's scared of losing herself but doesn't know how to hold on. The misunderstanding between us isn't loud or explosive. It's the quiet ache of unmet needs, the missed chances to bridge the distance growing between us. And every time Daniel tries to reach out physically before we've repaired the emotional gap, I shrink away a little more. Because without feeling truly seen, every touch feels like a reminder of what we've lost. That night, Daniel came home later than usual. I was in the kitchen, trying to get dinner on the table while the kids did their homework. When he stepped inside, he was tired but smiling, like he wanted to break through the wall between us. He leaned down to kiss me, soft at first, but as soon as his hand slid lower, the kiss felt different. Not warm or reassuring, but charged in a way that made me pull back inside, even as part of me wanted to lean in. His touch landed a little harder than I expected on my hip, then slipped lower in a quick, familiar motion. I flinched. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice low but concerned. I forced a smile, hiding the sudden rush of confusion and frustration inside me. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't push further then, but later when we sat down to watch a show, he nudged me again, his hand brushing my thigh. I caught myself stiffening, heart racing in a way that wasn't excitement, but anxiety. I wanted to want it, the closeness, the connection, but instead I felt numb, like I was watching from a distance. "Is something wrong?" he asked, pausing the show. I shrugged, not trusting my voice. "I don't know." He reached for me again, this time more tentative, but still persistent. I closed my eyes, feeling the tension in my chest tighten. I remembered the last time we kissed like this, when it felt like a dance, not a transaction. Now, every touch seemed to come with unspoken expectations, a pressure I couldn't meet. After a moment, I stood up and moved to the kitchen. "I'm going to get some water." "Come back," he said softly, but I already felt the space widening again. In the quiet of the kitchen, I leaned against the counter and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Why does everything have to turn into sex? I asked myself the question over and over. I wanted to feel close to him, to reconnect the way we used to, but every time he tried, it spiraled into something I wasn't ready for. Something that felt more like a demand than a gift. I loved Daniel. I wanted to reach across the gap between us, but I didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was pushing him away. The truth was, I was scared that if I opened up, I'd be rejected, or worse, ignored. So instead, I pulled back. I avoided his touches, overthought every kiss, and let the silence grow louder. And in that silence, I felt more alone than ever. Dinner was supposed to be normal. Just the four of us, me, Daniel, and the kids, trying to carve out a moment of peace in the middle of everything falling apart. But by the time we finished clearing plates, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel was trying, he really was. He suggested we watch a movie together, like we used to, And even offered to tuck the kids in early so we could have some time alone. I nodded, pretending I was okay, even though inside I was unraveling. When the kids finally left the room, Daniel reached for my hand, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Elise," he said softly, "can we talk? Like, really talk?" I looked at him, the man I'd loved for so long, now distant and cold, and suddenly the floodgates broke. "I'm so tired, Daniel," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm tired of pretending this is okay. I'm tired of feeling invisible in my own marriage." He blinked, stunned silent. "You don't see me. You don't hear me. You found out I was texting another dad from the school, and instead of trying to understand why, you ran off to DC and served me papers like I'm some stranger." The words spilled out, harsher than I meant. Tears welled up, and I wasn't sure if I was angry or just desperately sad. "You act like I'm the problem," I whispered, voice breaking. "But maybe it's you who stopped loving me years ago." Daniel's face tightened. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "No, maybe it's not," I said, wiping my eyes. "But it's true. You left me here, alone in this house with nothing but silence and cold touches. I tried to reach out, but you shut me down. And when I found someone who listened, who made me feel alive again, even if just for a moment, you treated me like a criminal." He looked away, jaw clenched, but didn't say anything. The room felt smaller, the space between us impossibly wide. I wanted to retreat, to hide from the mess I'd made, but I couldn't. Later, alone in the bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the wreckage. Why had I done it? Why had I let myself get this far? Part of me hated myself for texting him, the other dad from school, the one who wasn't Daniel, but part of me understood why. I was desperate for connection, for someone to see me as more than just a wife or a mother or a case number in some divorce proceeding. I felt guilt clawing at my chest, but it was tangled with relief. For the first time in a long time, I'd spoken my truth, even if it shattered everything. And now? Now I was left with questions I wasn't sure I could answer. Could we rebuild what we'd lost? Or was this the end of us, really? Days passed, then weeks, and the silence between Daniel and me grew heavier than any argument ever could. We moved around the house like shadows, careful not to bump into each other's pain. I missed him, the man who used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt, who held me like I mattered. But now, when I reached out, I was met with cold shoulders and quiet withdrawals. I didn't know how to break through the wall he'd built around himself. One evening, I watched him from the doorway as he sat alone in the living room, staring at his phone but seeing nothing. His jaw was tight, eyes clouded with something I recognized all too well: exhaustion, frustration, and a quiet sadness that mirrored my own. Daniel wasn't a villain. He was just a man carrying his own burdens, stress from work, the ache of disappointment, and maybe even regret. I wondered if he missed me, too, or if the distance had become a shield neither of us knew how to lower. I felt a heavy knot of guilt twisting inside me. Maybe I had pushed too hard, or maybe I'd stayed silent for too long before texting that other dad. Maybe we both had hurt each other in ways we couldn't fix with words or touch. Late at night, I'd lie awake, turning over memories, the good ones and the painful ones, wondering if what we had was worth fighting for. Could I find the courage to try again? To reach out without fear, to ask for what I needed and listen to what he needed? Or was it time to let go, to accept that some things change and that maybe this was the end of our story? The answer wasn't clear yet. But one thing was certain: I couldn't keep living in this space of silence and regret. I had to choose, fight for us, or walk away. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains as Daniel slept on the couch. I watched him for a moment, his face calm but worn, a quiet reminder of everything we'd lost and maybe what still remained. We hadn't spoken much since that night. No fights, no heated arguments. Just a fragile silence, like the space between us was a delicate glass waiting to shatter or be mended. I sat beside him carefully, not wanting to wake him, but needing to feel some connection. Slowly, I reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind his ear. He stirred, eyes fluttering open, meeting mine with a vulnerability I hadn't seen in a long time. Without words, he pulled me into a gentle hug, no demands, no expectations. Just a simple, honest closeness. For a moment, it felt like we were the two people we used to be, not the strangers drifting apart. When we finally spoke, it was with quiet honesty. "I don't know if we can fix everything," Daniel said, voice rough but sincere. "But I want to try. If you do." I nodded, the weight in my chest easing just a little. "Me too." We both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be hard conversations, mistakes, and moments of doubt. But for now, in that small, silent embrace, there was hope, a fragile but real chance to rebuild. And if that hope ever faded, I knew I'd be strong enough to let go. If you're still listening, thank you. Maybe this is my way of confessing, or maybe it's just me trying to make sense of all the pieces I couldn't hold together before. My name is Elise. I'm 38, and I've learned more about love and loss in the past year than I ever wanted to. I thought marriage was supposed to be safe, something steady, where desire and trust just grew naturally. But what I discovered is that love isn't a quiet certainty. It's messy. It's fragile. It's a constant work in progress, or it dies. I thought if I just held on, if I was patient enough, the man I loved would come back to me. But sometimes, the hardest truth is that people change. And sometimes, the person you fall in love with is someone you have to say goodbye to. Texting that other dad wasn't about betrayal. It was about feeling seen again, about grasping for a connection when mine felt lost. And maybe that's the cruelest thing about love, it doesn't always look like the stories we want to tell. Sometimes it's found in small moments of kindness from strangers, in conversations that remind you you're still alive. What I really needed, what we both needed, was emotional intimacy. That deep, quiet understanding that doesn't come from touch alone, but from being truly seen and heard. And that takes courage, patience, and sometimes pain. Daniel and I? We're still figuring it out. Some days, the distance feels smaller. Other days, it feels impossible. But I'm learning to be honest with myself about what I need, and to ask for it without shame or fear. I'm learning that wanting connection isn't weakness. It's human. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this: love isn't perfect. It isn't always beautiful or easy. It's a raw, often messy dance between two people trying not to lose themselves or each other. And sometimes, love means letting go, not because you stopped caring, but because you're brave enough to choose what's best for your soul. I don't know what the future holds for me or Daniel. But I do know this: I won't settle for silence when I need conversation. I won't accept distance when I crave closeness. And I won't be afraid to reach for the love that makes me feel alive. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? To be seen. To be wanted. To be loved, not just for who we were, but for who we still are. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. 10.